ReefBum is sponsored by Bulk Reef Supply and Ecotech Marine.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. So in this video I wanted to talk about some of the changes I've made to my reef keeping methods over the years. But before I get into that, if you folks want to help support the channel, please check out my SPS Frag store on reefbum.com as well as my equipment store. So let's get into the video. So I've been keeping reef tanks for a very long time, nearly 30 years, and I've been fortunate. I've had a lot of success with the hobby. But, you know, it hasn't always been rosy. I've had my failures as well. But by and large, my methods have not changed much over the years. I haven't evolved a lot in terms of how I take care of a reef tank. But recently, the last several years, I have made some changes to my methods. Now, number one I would have to say on that list is lighting and LEDs. So for my latest tank build, the Peninsula tank, I did go with the GHL Mitras versus metal halides, and you folks that know me know that I'm a big tried and true metal halide person, so I was certainly nervous about making that change. But man, I guess you can't argue with results. I've just experienced some great growth rates with the LEDs over the reef tank. You know, this is not a video that I'm gonna get into in terms of are LEDs better than halides, vice versa. I think there's a lot of arguments that can be made. But, you know, the one advantage with the LEDs is that they will run cooler versus the halides, which I like. So I don't have a chiller on the tank with the LEDs, but I do have a chiller on the tank with the halides. And I am keeping my tried and true metal halide roots with the LEDs because I'm running a spectrum on the LEDs that mimics the 400 watt 20K halides. And, you know, it seems to be working. I don't like the blue spectrum. I'm more of a full spectrum person. So, hey, you know, am I a convert in terms of going to LEDs from metal halides? Maybe. I don't know. But so far, so good. Now, another big change I've made to my methods is paying very close attention to pH. And I want to give a shout out to my buddy Chris Meckley over at ACI Aquaculture for putting that on my radar screen. So I've always dosed Cockwasser, and that's what Chris's method is all about, is dosing Cockwasser to raise the suppressed pH on a system using a calcium reactor. So I've always used it, and I've used it in a Kalk reactor via a auto top-off device, but I never focused on it. I focused more on the alkalinity, sort of chase the alkalinity. I made a switch over to using two-part, so having a depressed pH wasn't as much of an issue with the two-part. But I switched back to a calcium reactor, and I did certainly notice a drop in my pH. And being here in Vermont with the windows closed in the winter time, the carbon dioxide building up in the room, it was an issue for me. So I needed to kind of come up with some solutions. So pretty much I did a few things. I added an air exchange unit to help bring in fresh air from the outside and circulate within the room where the fish tanks are here in my finished basement. But I also started dosing Cockwasser. So the method that I borrowed from Chris was to have a dedicated drum to dose Cockwasser. So in that drum, I have RODI water, and I put in some Cockwasser and make sure it's a super saturated solution. And that super saturated solution gets dosed to replace essentially the water that is evaporating in the tank. I've actually got the drum hooked into both my systems, not only the 187 gallon tank, but also the 225 gallon tank. And it's been great. You know, I mean, it has helped to really elevate the pH with my calcium reactors. The other thing is that I'm also dripping the effluent from the calcium reactors into the skimmer pump for each system to help degas the CO2 because there's a lot of aeration with the skimmer pumps. So overall, my effort to really boost the pH, I've noticed a lot of great growth in both of my systems, and that's something that you know, I've always had some really good growth, but not explosive growth. Another thing that I'm doing differently with my reef tanks is actively removing detritus. So when I do water changes, I siphon the detritus out of my sumps. Every other day, I take a power head to both of my tanks to blow detritus off the rocks. And in my peninsula tank, I focus on the bare bottom. It's really only one end of that tank where the detritus settles on. So I'll just blast all the detritus out, get it into the water column so it can get removed by the mechanical filtration. But I also think with all the detritus floating around in that tank, that it perhaps is beneficial for the corals, good coral food. So besides the plus in terms of detritus being beneficial for coral nutrition, the big thing for me is to help keep nutrients down, right? The lower the nutrients, the less chance you're going to get of problematic algae breaking out within the tank. So yeah, I've been very, very, very diligent with my tanks and actively removing detritus. I even, every week when I do water changes in my frag tanks, I will siphon out whatever detritus I can. I'll remove the frag racks. So it's really been important to me to make sure that there are no detritus traps anywhere in my systems. Another thing that I've been doing differently recently is dosing bacteria. Now, is that really necessary for a mature reef tank? I did a whole video on that topic. You know, is the filtration systems that we have today, the protein skimmers, stronger where they're actually pulling out beneficial bacteria that need to be replaced? I don't know. All I know is that my corals have been looking great since I started doing this. I took my Chaeto offline. When I started dosing bacteria, I'm happy where my nitrates and phosphates are at. You know, my nitrates are around 2.5 to 5 parts per million. My phosphates are under 0.1. It's been easier in terms of tank maintenance with the Chaeto offline. Every now and then my Chaeto would crash. I you know, also don't have to worry about cleaning the refugium or the algae reactor. So it's been lower maintenance and the results have been great. So it's something that I'll continue to do. And the last thing that I have learned over the years is if things are going well, don't make a lot of changes and fiddle with the tank. You know, it's good to fine-tune things here or there, but what I've found is, like, if you've got a really good formula and the corals are looking healthy and happy, then it probably doesn't make sense to make any major changes to the way you're tending to that reef tank. So I've always found that consistency pays off big time in reef keeping, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, that'll do it for this video. Many thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.